Imagine you are holding a glass of water. It isn't heavy. If you hold it for a minute, you won't even notice the weight. But what happens if you hold it for an hour? Your arm begins to ache. What if you hold it for an entire day? Your arm becomes numb, paralyzed, and eventually the glass falls and shatters. The weight of the water never changed, but the longer you held onto it, the heavier it became. Most of us are walking through life with 1,000 glasses of water in our hands, wondering why we feel so exhausted, why our souls feel paralyzed, and why we can no longer find the strength to smile. He sat on a weathered wooden bench, staring at a horizon that offered no answers. His name was Elias, and at 45, he felt like a ghost inhabiting a tired body. His mind was a storm that never ran out of rain. He remembered every failure from a decade ago as if it had happened this morning. He replayed the harsh words of his father, the look of disappointment in his ex-wife's eyes, and the crushing weight of the business he had lost 3 years prior. Every mistake was a stone he had picked up and placed in his pocket. He was carrying so many stones that he had forgotten how it felt to walk upright. He was heavy. He was full. And because he was so full of yesterday, there was no room in him for today. The noise in his head was a constant buzzing static. It was the sound of what-ifs and if-onlys. He hadn't slept a full night in years because the moment he closed his eyes, the archives of his mind would open. He would browse through the chapters of his regrets, highlighting his errors in bright, painful colors. He believed that by thinking about his problems more intensely, he would eventually solve them. He thought that by dwelling on his pain, he was somehow honoring it. He didn't realize he was drowning in a pool of his own making, and the water was rising every single day. One afternoon, driven by a desperation he couldn't name, Elias climbed the steep, winding path to a small monastery tucked away in the clouds. He had heard of an old man there, a monk who lived in silence, and was said to possess a peace that defied logic. When Elias finally reached the top, his breath was ragged, his chest heaving. He found the monk sitting in a courtyard, pouring tea into a small ceramic cup. The monk didn't look up, he just kept pouring. Elias began to speak, the words spilling out of him like a broken dam. He told the monk about his failures, his anxieties, his broken heart, and the suffocating fear that he would never be enough. He spoke for 20 minutes, his voice trembling with the weight of a lifetime of baggage. The monk remained silent, his gaze fixed on the cup. But he didn't stop pouring. The tea filled the cup, reached the rim, and then began to overflow. It spilled onto the saucer, then over the edge of the table, and finally onto the monk's robes and the stone floor. Elias stopped mid-sentence, staring in confusion. "Stop!" he cried out. "Can't you see? The cup is full. No more will go in." The monk finally looked up, his eyes clear as a mountain spring. He set the teapot down and gestured to the spilling mess. "Like this cup," he said softly, "you are so full of your own opinions, your own regrets, and your own shadows that nothing new can find its way in. You come seeking peace, but where would I put it? There is no room. To taste the tea, you must first empty your cup." Elias felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The monk wasn't talking about the tea. He was talking about the graveyard Elias was carrying in his head. The monk stood up and walked to the edge of the courtyard, overlooking the vast valley below. He told Elias that the human mind is the most powerful tool in existence, but it is also the most dangerous prison. We think that by holding on to our past, we're protecting ourselves from repeating it. We think that by worrying about the future, we're preparing for it. But in reality, we're just cluttering our internal house with furniture we no longer use until we can no longer move through the rooms. "Emptying your mind doesn't mean becoming a blank slate or forgetting who you are," the monk whispered. "It means letting go of the grip you have on things that no longer exist. You are mourning a version of yourself that died years ago. You are fighting battles that ended before the sun rose today. You are a traveler who refuses to put down his luggage at the end of the journey. Tell me, Elias, how can you catch the blessings of the present if your hands are tightly clenched around the ghosts of the past? Elias looked at his hands. They were indeed clenched. His jaw was tight. His shoulders were hiked up toward his ears. He realized that his physical body was a literal map of his mental chaos. He had been living in a state of constant contraction. The monk told him a secret that day, a secret that changed everything. He said that every thought you have is like a guest in your house. Some guests are kind, others are cruel. Some bring gifts, others bring fire. The mistake we make is trying to force the bad guests to leave by arguing with them. But the more you argue with a guest, the longer they stay. The secret to an empty mind is not to fight the thoughts, but to stop serving them tea. Observe the thought of failure. See it, acknowledge it, but do not sit down with it. Do not feed it. Let it walk through the front door of your mind and out the back door. Do not build a room for it to live in. Elias spent the next few days in the silence of the mountains. At first, the silence was terrifying. Without the noise of his worries, he felt exposed. But slowly, the terror turned into a strange, light clarity. He practiced the art of the great release. Whenever a memory of his failed business surfaced, he would breathe in and say to himself, "That was then, this is now." He imagined opening his hands and letting the thought float away like smoke. He realized that his mind was not the thoughts. He was the sky, and the thoughts were just clouds. The sky doesn't try to hold on to a storm. It lets the storm pass through, and when it is gone, the sky is still there, blue, vast, and untouched. As he descended the mountain a week later, Elias didn't look like a different man, but he felt like one. The weight in his chest had vanished. The horizon no longer looked like a wall. It looked like an invitation. He understood now that life is lived in the gaps between thoughts. It is lived in the breath, in the wind against your skin, in the simple act of walking without a destination. So you see, the world will always try to fill you up. It will try to fill you with fear, with greed, with comparison, and with noise. Your job, the most important work you will ever do, is to keep your cup empty. Guard your inner space with your life. Do not let the shadows of yesterday darken the sunlight of today. Stop carrying the glass. Stop feeding the guests who only bring you pain. Open your hands. Let the what-ifs and the should-haves fall to the ground and shatter. They were never yours to keep anyway. When you finally empty your mind, you don't find nothingness. You find everything. You find the version of yourself that was buried under the rubble. You find the strength to start again. You find peace. Take a deep breath right now. Feel the air enter your lungs. This breath is new. It has never happened before. It is the only thing that is real. Everything else is just a story you are telling yourself. Empty the cup. The tea is waiting. Look at your life as it stands right now. Look at the people you love, the work you do, and the dreams you've tucked away in the back of your heart. How much of your energy is being spent on things that are already dead? We spend our lives building monuments to our pain, visiting them every day, laying fresh flowers of worry on graves that should have been grassed over years ago. We think this is what it means to be responsible. We think this is what it means to be human. But this isn't living. It's just a slow, polite way of dying. The truth is, your mind is a garden. If you do not pull the weeds of yesterday, there is no sun, no water, and no soil left for the seeds of tomorrow. We are so afraid of the emptiness. We are terrified of the silence that comes when we stop complaining, stop overthinking, and stop blaming. We fill that silence with digital noise, with mindless scrolling, and with the constant pursuit of more because we are scared that if we empty our minds, we will find that there is nothing left. But the monk was right. The emptiness isn't a void, it's a clearing. It's the place where your intuition finally gets a chance to speak. It's the place where your creativity is born. You cannot paint a masterpiece on a canvas that is already covered in scribbles and dirt. You have to scrub it clean. You have to be brave enough to stand before the blankness and say, I am starting over. Think about the rivers.
A river is beautiful because it is always moving. It never holds on to the water that passed through it a mile ago. If it did, it would become a stagnant pond, a breeding ground for rot and decay. The river is powerful because it lets go. It flows over the rocks, it bends around the mountains, and it leaves behind everything it touches. To be truly alive, you must become like the river. You must let the moments flow through you without trying to grab them, without trying to own them, and without trying to keep them. When you walk away from this moment, ask yourself, what am I still carrying that I should have dropped a mile back? Is it a grudge against a friend? Is it the shame of a mistake you made when you didn't know any better? Is it the fear that you're not as successful as someone else on a screen? Drop it, right here, right now. Not because it didn't happen, and not because it didn't hurt.